The laughter hit me like a slap across the face. I stood there in the doorway of Romano's Bistro, watching my wife Kathy lean across the table toward her friends, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she thought she was being clever. "Paul's sweet, really he is," she said, twirling her wine glass. "But honestly, he's just so below my level. I mean, look at where I am now versus where he stuck." Her friends, Jennifer, Lisa, and that snake Heather, all giggled like schoolgirls. Jennifer nodded knowingly. "You've really grown beyond him, haven't you?" "Completely," Kathy continued, not noticing me yet. "Sometimes I wonder what I was thinking when I married a guy who sells industrial equipment. I'm running marketing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies, and he's still trying to convince factory managers to buy conveyor belts." I cleared my throat. All four heads turned toward me, and I watched the color drain from Kathy's face, but I kept my expression neutral, even managed a smile. "Sorry I'm late, ladies," I said, sliding into the empty chair beside my wife. "Traffic was murder coming from the Henderson account. Just closed a deal worth $200,000, actually." The table went quiet. Kathy's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to catch flies. I signaled the waiter. "Bottle of your best champagne," I told him. "We're celebrating my wife's honesty tonight." I pulled out my credit card and placed it on the table with a deliberate snap. Then I stood up, leaned down, and kissed Kathy on the forehead. "Enjoy your dinner, sweetheart," I whispered in her ear. "Consider it my parting gift to someone so far above my level." I walked out of that restaurant with my head high and my heart hammering against my ribs. Behind me, I could hear the uncomfortable murmur of voices, but I didn't look back. Not once. The drive home gave me time to think. 15 years of marriage, and this was what I got. Not just the cheating. Oh yes, I knew about Chad from her office, had known for weeks. But the complete and utter disrespect. The casual cruelty of it. Our house sat on Maple Street in what used to be a decent neighborhood before the factory closures. Now it was all peeling paint and broken dreams, but it was mine. I'd bought it with my own money, fixed it up with my own hands. Kathy always complained it wasn't good enough, wasn't in the right part of town. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, looking at the yellow light in Mrs. Deacon's window next door. That old woman never missed anything that happened on our street. She'd probably seen Chad's BMW in our driveway more than once when I was supposedly at work. My phone buzzed. A text from Heather, of all people. "Paul, I'm sorry about tonight. You deserved better than that." Interesting. Heather apologizing when she'd been right there laughing along. I typed back, "Thanks. Guess I know where I stand now." Her response came immediately. "There's more you should know. Can we talk?" I stared at that message for a long time. Heather had never liked me much, always treated me like I was some kind of caveman who'd somehow tricked her brilliant friend into marriage. Why would she want to help me now? But I was curious. And curiosity, as they say, can be a dangerous thing. "Tomorrow," I typed back. "Rise Bar on 5th Street, 7 p.m. Inside the house, I went straight to my workshop in the garage. It was my sanctuary, filled with tools and half-finished projects that Kathy called junk. I pulled out a beer and sat on my workbench, trying to process what had just happened. The garage door was open, and I could see Mrs. Deacon's silhouette moving around in her kitchen. She waved when she noticed me looking, and I waved back. At least someone in this neighborhood still had manners. My phone rang. Kathy. "Paul, where did you go? We need to talk about this." "Talk about what?" I kept my voice level. "About how I'm below your level? I think you made that pretty clear." "I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting to the girls. You know how it is." "No, actually, I don't know how it is. I don't sit around with my friends talking about how my spouse isn't good enough for me." There was a pause. Then, "You're being dramatic. Come back to the restaurant." "I don't think so. Enjoy your evening with people who are more on your level." I hung up and turned off the phone. Let her stew on that for a while. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, Kathy was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Had to go in early for a client presentation. We'll talk tonight. Right, a client presentation. With Chad, no doubt. I made coffee and sat at our kitchen table, looking out at the backyard I'd spent so many weekends working on. The garden was coming along nicely, though Kathy never seemed to notice. She was always too busy with her career, her networking events, her growth opportunities. Mrs. Deacon was hanging laundry on her line, and she caught my eye through the window. She made a little gesture toward Kathy's car, which was conspicuously absent from the driveway, then shrugged as if to say, "What can you do? That old woman saw everything." I decided to take a sick day, called my boss and told him I had food poisoning, which wasn't entirely a lie. The whole situation was making me sick to my stomach. Instead of going to work, I did something I'd never done before. I searched the house. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Kathy had hidden a second phone in her underwear drawer, tucked inside a sock. The messages between her and Chad went back 3 months. The content was exactly what you'd expect, but it was the casual cruelty that got to me. "Paul's working late again," she'd written. "Perfect time for you to come over. He'll never suspect anything. He's too simple." Another message. "Sometimes I feel like I'm babysitting instead of being married. Chad, you make me feel alive again." And the worst one. "I'm thinking about asking for a divorce, but I want to make sure I get the house. Paul put everything in both our names like an idiot." I took pictures of everything with my own phone, then put hers back exactly where I'd found it. My hands were shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. Kathy thought I was simple, below her level, too stupid to figure out what was going on right under my nose. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Rye's bar hadn't changed in 20 years, which was exactly why I liked it. Dark wood, dim lighting, and the kind of atmosphere where people minded their own business. Rye himself was behind the bar when I walked in, a mountain of a man with graying hair and hands like anvils. "Paul," he said, sliding a beer across the bar without being asked. "You look like someone ran over your dog. Worse, someone ran over my marriage." I'd known Rye since high school. He'd bought this place after getting out of the Army, and it had become my refuge whenever life got complicated. He was the kind of friend who listened more than he talked, which made him perfect for what I needed right now. Heather showed up 10 minutes later, looking nervous. She ordered wine and sat beside me at the bar, glancing around like she expected someone to jump out of the shadows. "So," I said, "what is it I should know?" She took a long sip of wine before answering. "Kathy's been planning this for months. The affair, the divorce, all of it." "I figured that much out on my own." "No, you don't understand. She's been moving money around, talking to lawyers. She wants to take you for everything you've got." I almost laughed. "Everything I've got? We're not exactly wealthy." "The house is worth more than you think. Property values in your neighborhood are going up because of the downtown development project. She's been tracking it." That was news to me. I'd been so focused on work that I hadn't paid attention to local real estate trends. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "I thought you were her friend." Heather's face darkened. I was her friend, until she stabbed me in the back. "How so?" "There was a promotion at our agency. Creative director position. I'd been working toward it for 2 years, put in overtime, brought in new clients. Then Kathy swooped in at the last minute and got it instead." "And you think she doesn't deserve it?" "I know she doesn't deserve it. She slept with the client to seal the deal." Now that was interesting. "The Henderson Group account?" "You know about it." "I know she's been working late a lot lately, and I know she's been spending time with Chad, who works on that account." Heather nodded. "Chad's the account manager, but he's not the one making decisions. That would be Richard Henderson himself. Married man, 3 kids, very concerned about his reputation." The pieces were starting to fit together. "So Kathy's been playing multiple angles. She's been playing everyone, including you." I finished my beer and signaled Rye for another. "What do you want out of this, Heather? I'm assuming you didn't come here just to be helpful." "I want her to pay for what she did to me, and I figure you want the same thing." "Maybe, but I'm not interested in doing anything illegal or stupid." "I'm not talking about anything illegal. I'm talking about giving her a taste of her own medicine." I studied Heather's face. She was attractive in a sharp, ambitious way, the kind of woman who probably ate men like Chad for breakfast. But right now, she looked genuinely hurt. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "She's planning to humiliate you in the divorce, make you look like a deadbeat husband who couldn't keep up with her success. I think we should return the favor." "How?" "By letting everyone know who she really is. Her clients, her coworkers, her social circle, all those people she's so desperate to impress." It was tempting, very tempting. But I'd learned a long time ago that revenge was a dish best served with careful planning. "I need to think about it," I told her. "Don't think too long. She's moving fast." After Heather left, I stayed at the bar for another hour, talking things over with Rye. He'd been through his own messy divorce years ago, so he understood the situation better than most. "The thing about revenge," he said, wiping down glasses, "is that it's only satisfying if you don't get caught. And if you do it right, they destroy themselves." "What do you mean?" "I mean you don't have to do anything dramatic. Just give people the information they need to make their own decisions about your wife. Such as? Such as letting her boss know that she's been using company time for personal affairs, such as making sure her clients understand what kind of person they're really dealing with. That's a dangerous game. So is letting her walk all over you. I went home that night to find Kathy waiting for me in the living room. She'd changed into the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the blue one that brought out her eyes. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled just the way I used to like it. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening." "About last night. I was wrong to say those things. I was frustrated about work, and I took it out on you." "Frustrated about work. Right. Paul, I love you. I know I haven't been the best wife lately, but I want to work on our marriage." I sat down across from her, studying her face. She was good at this. I had to give her credit. If I hadn't seen those text messages, I might have believed her. "What do you want to work on?" I asked. "Communication, for starters. I think we've grown apart because we don't talk anymore." "You're right about that. When was the last time you told me the truth about anything?" Her smile flickered. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when was the last time you came home from work and told me what you actually did that day? Who you talked to, where you went, what you accomplished?" "I tell you about work all the time. You tell me about meetings and presentations and client calls. You don't tell me about the parts that matter." "Paul, you're being paranoid." "Am I? Then you won't mind if I ask you about Chad." The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. "Chad's a coworker. What about him? How long have you been sleeping with him?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. Kathy's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "I know, Kathy. I've known for weeks. The question is what we're going to do about it." She stood up suddenly, her composure cracking. "You've been spying on me." "I've been paying attention. There's a difference. This is exactly why I need someone like Chad. You're controlling and suspicious and below your level. Yes, you made that clear last night." She started crying then, the kind of tears that had worked on me for 15 years. But something had changed. Maybe it was seeing those text messages, or maybe it was just finally understanding who I was really married to. "Paul, please, we can fix this." "No," I said, standing up. "We can't. But don't worry. I'm sure Chad is much more on your level." I went upstairs and packed a bag. When I came back down, Kathy was still standing in the living room, looking lost. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Somewhere more appropriate for someone of my social status." I walked out the door and drove straight back to Rye's place. He had an apartment above the bar, and he'd offered to let me crash there whenever I needed space. As I carried my bag up the stairs, I could see Mrs. Deacon watching from her window across the street. She gave me a little wave, and I waved back. Tomorrow, I decided, the real game would begin. The next morning, I woke up on Rye's couch with a plan forming in my mind. Kathy thought she was so much smarter than me, so much more sophisticated. She was about to learn that intelligence and education aren't the same thing. My first stop was the office. I had vacation days saved up, and I figured now was a good time to use them. My boss, Jerry, was understanding when I explained that I was going through some personal issues. "Take all the time you need," he said. "Just don't let it affect the Henderson account. That's a big one." "About that," I said, "you might want to know that there are some complications with their account manager at the marketing agency." Jerry raised an eyebrow. "What kind of complications?" "The kind that could reflect poorly on our professional relationship if they become public." I didn't say more than that. I didn't need to. Jerry was smart enough to read between the lines, and he'd make his own inquiries. My next stop was the coffee shop across from Kathy's office building. I sat by the window with a newspaper and waited. Sure enough, at 10:30 a.m., Kathy and Chad walked out together, heading toward his BMW. I followed them at a distance, staying back far enough to avoid detection. They drove to the Riverside Hotel, the fancy place downtown where Kathy always said we should go for special occasions but never could afford. Apparently, we could afford it when Chad was paying. I parked across the street and waited. They came out 2 hours later, looking relaxed and satisfied. Chad kissed her goodbye in the parking lot, right out in the open where anyone could see. I took pictures. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Mrs. Deacon. She was working in her garden when I knocked on her fence. "Paul," she said, looking pleased to see me. "How are you holding up, dear?" "I've been better, Mrs. Deacon. Can I ask you something?" "Of course. You've lived on this street for 30 years. You know everyone, see everything. If someone was doing something they shouldn't be doing, would you feel obligated to tell their family?" She set down her gardening shears and gave me a long look. That depends on what they were doing and whether their family deserved to know. What if they were cheating on their spouse? Well, she said slowly, I'd say the spouse has a right to know, especially if the cheating partner was planning to hurt them in other ways. Other ways? Like financially. Or legally. I may be old, Paul, but I'm not blind. I've seen the cars in your driveway when you weren't home. I've seen your wife meeting with that lawyer from downtown. That was news to me. What lawyer? David Morrison, divorce attorney. Very expensive. They met at the coffee shop on 3rd Street last week. Mrs. Deacon was better than a private investigator. Thank you, I said. That's very helpful. Paul, dear, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you're a good man. You've always been polite, you keep your property nice, and you helped me with my roof last year when I couldn't afford a contractor. I appreciate that. What I'm trying to say is, if you need someone to testify about what they've seen around here, I'd be happy to help. I smiled. I'll keep that in mind. That evening, I met Heather at a different bar across town. She looked excited, like she'd been planning something all day. I have an idea, she said without preamble. The Henderson Group is throwing a reception next week. Big client event. Everyone from both companies will be there. So? So it would be a shame if someone accidentally played the wrong presentation during the cocktail hour. What kind of presentation? She smiled. The kind that shows what your wife and Chad have really been working on during their client meetings. You have video? I have access to the hotel's security system through a friend who works there. The Riverside Hotel has cameras in their parking areas. I thought about it. It was risky, but it was also poetic justice. Kathy wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. Maybe it was time to return the favor. What would you need from me? I asked. Just show up and act surprised when it happens. Can you do that? I think I can manage. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. I moved more of my things out of the house, always when Kathy was at work. She called me constantly, alternating between apologies and accusations, but I kept the conversation short. We need to talk about our future, she said during one call. I agree. I think our future is pretty clear. Paul, don't be like this. We can work things out. Some things can't be worked out, Kathy. Some things are just over. You're being dramatic. I'm being realistic. There's a difference. The night before the Henderson reception, I got a call from Jerry at work. Paul, I need to ask you something, and I want a straight answer. Shoot. Is your wife having an affair with someone at her company? I paused. Why do you ask? Because Richard Henderson called me today. Apparently, someone sent him some very interesting photographs of his account manager and a certain marketing director at a hotel. I see. Paul, if this affects our business relationship with Henderson Group, we're going to have problems. Jerry, I can promise you that whatever happens, it won't reflect poorly on our company. We're the victims here, not the perpetrators. Good, because Henderson is furious. He's talking about pulling the account from the marketing agency entirely. After I hung up, I sat in Rye's apartment and thought about what I'd set in motion. Kathy had wanted to play in the big leagues, to operate at a level above mine. She was about to learn that the higher you climb, the farther you have to fall. The Henderson reception was held at the Marriott downtown in their biggest ballroom. I arrived fashionably late, wearing my best suit and a confident smile. The room was full of people I recognized from both companies, all networking and schmoozing and pretending to enjoy themselves. Kathy was there, looking stunning in a black dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Chad was beside her, playing the role of attentive colleague. They both looked relaxed, confident, completely unaware of what was coming. I found a spot near the back of the room and waited. At exactly 8 o'clock, the lights dimmed and a screen descended from the ceiling. Richard Henderson stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Before we continue with the evening's festivities, I'd like to share a presentation that I think will be very illuminating. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly the room was watching security footage from the Riverside Hotel parking lot. The timestamp showed last Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. The video clearly showed Kathy and Chad kissing beside his BMW, their body language leaving no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The room went quiet. I watched Kathy's face go white, watched Chad look around desperately for an exit that didn't exist. Henderson's voice cut through the silence like a blade. This is what our account managers have been doing during business hours, on company time, while billing us for client services. The video continued, showing them entering the hotel together, then leaving 2 hours later. The evidence was undeniable. Effective immediately, Henderson continued, the Henderson Group is terminating our contract with this marketing agency. We don't do business with people who lack basic professional ethics." The screen went black, and the lights came back up. Half the room was staring at Kathy and Chad, while the other half was trying to pretend they hadn't seen anything. I watched my wife gather what remained of her dignity and walk toward the exit, Chad trailing behind her like a lost puppy. As she passed my table, our eyes met for just a moment. "Paul," she whispered. "Kathy," I replied, raising my glass in a mock toast. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." She kept walking, and I never saw her look back. The fallout from the Henderson reception was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, the story had spread through both companies like wildfire. Kathy was suspended pending an internal investigation, and Chad was transferred to a different department. The marketing agency lost not just the Henderson account, but 2 other clients who decided they didn't want to work with a company that had such loose professional standards. I was back at work, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, when Jerry called me into his office. "Paul, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not taking your warning more seriously. If I'd acted sooner, we might have avoided this whole mess." "It's not your fault, Jerry. You couldn't have known how far it would go. Still, I should have trusted your judgment. You've always been straight with me." He offered me a promotion, senior account manager, with a substantial raise. Under normal circumstances, I would have been thrilled. Now it just felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. That evening, I went back to the house to collect more of my belongings. Kathy's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. I'd assumed she'd be hiding out somewhere, licking her wounds. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a bottle of wine and a stack of papers. She looked up when I walked in, and I was shocked by how much she'd aged in just a few days. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup smeared, and her eyes were red from crying. "Paul," she said, "I've been waiting for you." "I'm just here to get some clothes." "Please sit down. We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I sat down across from her. The papers on the table, I noticed, were divorce documents. "I know you hate me," she said. "I know I deserve it. But I need you to understand something." "I'm listening." "I never meant for it to go this far. The thing with Chad, it just happened. I was feeling neglected, unappreciated, and he made me feel special again." "So this is my fault?" "No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I made a mistake, a huge, terrible mistake, and now I'm paying for it. We're both paying for it. You're not the one who lost their job. You're not the one whose reputation is ruined." I looked at her sitting there, feeling sorry for herself, and I realized that she still didn't get it. She still thought this was something that had happened to her, rather than something she had caused. "Kathy, do you remember what you said at the restaurant that night? About me being below your level?" I was angry. I didn't mean it. "Yes, you did. And you know what? You were right. I am below your level. I don't lie to people I'm supposed to love. I don't cheat on my commitments. I don't use people for my own advantage. If that makes me below your level, I'm proud to be there." "Paul, please. Can't we try to work this out?" "Work what out? The lying? The cheating? The fact that you were planning to divorce me and take everything I've worked for?" Her face went white. "How did you? Mrs. Deacon saw you meeting with David Morrison. Did you really think you could keep that secret in a neighborhood like this?" "I was just exploring my options." "Your options for screwing me over." She started crying again, but this time it felt different. Less manipulative, more genuine. "I'm scared, Paul. I don't know what I'm going to do. The agency fired me this morning. Chad won't return my calls. I can't afford the mortgage on this place by myself." "You should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't good enough for you." "I never said you weren't good enough. You said I was below your level. Same thing." I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. "Paul, I'm begging you, don't leave me with nothing." "I'm not leaving you with nothing. I'm leaving you with exactly what you brought to this marriage. Your education, your ambition, and your superior social status. That should be more than enough for someone of your caliber." I pulled away from her and headed for the stairs. Behind me, I could hear her sobbing, but I didn't look back. Upstairs, I packed the last of my personal belongings. As I was folding clothes into a suitcase, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the bedroom window, I saw Chad's BMW. This should be interesting. I finished packing and headed downstairs, just in time to see Chad walk through the front door without knocking. He looked terrible, unshaven, disheveled, and desperate. "Kathy, we need to talk," he said, then noticed me standing on the stairs. "Oh, Paul?" "Chad, nice to see you again." "Look, Paul, I know this is awkward, but—" "Awkward? That's an interesting way to put it." Kathy appeared from the kitchen, looking hopeful for the first time since I'd arrived. "Chad, Thank God you're here. I've been trying to reach you all day. Yeah, well, I've been busy. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? What I've cost you? My career is over, Kathy. Over. They transferred me to the mailroom. The mailroom? I went from account manager to mail clerk because of you. Because of me? You're the one who suggested we meet at hotels during work hours. I suggested lunch meetings. You're the one who turned them into afternoon affairs. I watched this exchange with fascination. It was like watching two rats turn on each other in a sinking ship. So what are you saying? Kathy asked. I'm saying this thing between us is over. I can't afford to be associated with you anymore. Chad, you can't be serious. What about everything we talked about? Our plans? What plans? You mean the part where we were going to run away together after you divorced Paul? Kathy, I never agreed to that. I was just having some fun. The look on Kathy's face was heartbreaking. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You said you loved me, she whispered. I said a lot of things. People say things when they're caught up in the moment. Chad turned to leave, then stopped and looked at me. Paul, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to get this complicated. Chad, I said, let me give you some advice. Next time you want to have some fun, pick someone who's actually available. It's less complicated that way. He nodded and left, and I heard his BMW roar to life in the driveway. Kathy collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. For 15 years, I would have gone to her, held her, tried to make her feel better. Now I just picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. Paul, please don't leave me like this. I stopped at the threshold and looked back at her one last time. You know what the funny thing is, Kathy? You were right about me being below your level. I could never have treated someone the way you treated me. I don't have it in me to be that cruel. Paul, goodbye, Kathy. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I walked out of that house and never looked back. 3 weeks later, I was settling into my new apartment across town when Heather called with an interesting proposition. There's going to be a town hall meeting next week about the downtown development project, she said. Kathy's been trying to get involved, positioning herself as some kind of community advocate. Good for her. Paul, she's telling people that you're the reason she lost her job, that you sabotaged her career out of jealousy. That got my attention. Is she now? She's playing the victim, making it sound like you're some kind of controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. I thought about this for a moment. It was a smart strategy, actually. Kathy was trying to rehabilitate her reputation by rewriting history. If she could convince people that I was the villain in this story, she might be able to salvage something from the wreckage of her career. What do you want me to do about it? I asked. I want you to show up at the meeting. Let people see who you really are, not the monster she's making you out to be. I don't know, Heather. I'm trying to move on with my life. Paul, she's not going to stop. She's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. If you don't defend yourself, she's going to destroy what's left of your reputation. She had a point. I'd been so focused on getting my revenge that I hadn't considered Kathy might try to strike back. The town hall meeting was held at the community center, a squat brick building that had seen better days. I arrived early and took a seat in the back, wanting to observe before making my presence known. The room filled up slowly with the usual suspects, local business owners, community activists, and people who just like to complain about things. Kathy was there, sitting in the front row, looking professional in a navy blue suit. When her turn came to speak, she walked to the podium with confidence. She'd always been good at public speaking. Good evening, she began. My name is Kathy Morrison, and I'm here to talk about the importance of supporting local businesses during this period of downtown development. She launched into a well-prepared speech about economic growth and community values. It was impressive, actually. If I hadn't known better, I might have been convinced she was just a concerned citizen trying to make a difference. But then she got to the personal part. I know what it's like to struggle in this community, she said. I know what it's like to have your career sabotaged by people who can't handle your success. I know what it's like to be torn down by those who should be building you up. She was good. She never mentioned me by name, but everyone in the room who knew us would understand what she was talking about. But I also know what it's like to persevere, she continued, to rebuild after everything has been taken from you, to rise above the pettiness and vindictiveness of others. That was my cue. I stood up and walked toward the front of the room. Conversation stopped as people recognized me. Kathy's face went pale when she saw me approaching. Excuse me, I said when I reached the microphone area. May I respond to that? The moderator, a nervous-looking man named Peterson, glanced between Kathy and me uncertainly. This is supposed to be about community development, he said. This is about community, I replied. It's about what kind of community we want to be. and what kind of people we want to represent us. Peterson nodded reluctantly. You have 5 minutes? I took the microphone and looked out at the room. These were my neighbors, people I'd lived among for 15 years. They deserved to know the truth. My name is Paul Morrison, I began. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I've lived in this community for 15 years. I've paid my taxes, maintained my property, and tried to be a good neighbor. I paused, looking directly at Kathy. The woman who just spoke is my wife, or rather my soon-to-be ex-wife. She's right about one thing: her career was sabotaged, but not by me. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's sound system. Peterson started to object, but I held up a hand. This will just take a minute. I played a recording I'd made of one of Chad's voicemails, the one where he admitted to using Kathy to get information about other clients, then dumping her when things got complicated. The room was silent as Chad's voice filled the space. Kathy, I told you, from the beginning this was just for fun. I never promised you anything permanent. You're the one who made it complicated by falling for me. When the recording ended, I looked back at the audience. My wife didn't lose her job because I sabotaged her. She lost her job because she chose to have an affair with a coworker on company time while billing clients for services she wasn't providing. Kathy stood up suddenly. Paul, you have no right. I have every right, I interrupted. You stood up there and accused me of destroying your career out of jealousy. But the truth is, you destroyed your own career. And you destroyed our marriage. And now you're trying to destroy my reputation to make yourself feel better about it. The room was completely quiet now. I could see Mrs. Deacon in the third row, nodding approvingly. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, I continued. I'm here because I believe this community deserves leaders with integrity, people who take responsibility for their actions instead of blaming others when things go wrong. I handed the microphone back to Peterson and started to walk away, but Kathy's voice stopped me. Paul, wait. I turned around. She was standing beside the podium, tears streaming down her face. You're right, she said, about everything. I made terrible choices, and I hurt you, and I tried to blame you for my own mistakes. The room held its breath. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued, but I want everyone here to know that Paul Morrison is a good man, a better man than I deserved. She sat down abruptly, covering her face with her hands. I stood there for a moment, looking at this woman I'd been married to for 15 years. She was broken, defeated, completely stripped of the arrogance and ambition that had defined her for so long. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Part of me wanted to twist the knife a little deeper. But mostly, I just felt tired. Thank you, I said simply and walked out of the room. Outside, the evening air was cool and clean. I could hear the murmur of voices from inside the community center, but I didn't look back. My phone buzzed with a text from Rye. How did it go? I typed back, It's over. And it was. Not just the meeting, but the whole ugly chapter of my life. Kathy would have to find her own way forward, just like I was doing. I walked to my truck and drove home to my new apartment, where I had a beer on the balcony and watched the sun set over the city. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. Kathy kept the house but had to take over the mortgage payments. I kept my pension, my truck, and my self-respect. She moved back in with her parents and eventually found work at a smaller marketing firm in the next town over. We never spoke again, but Mrs. Deacon kept me informed of the neighborhood gossip. Chad, according to Heather, was fired from the marketing agency and moved to another state. Apparently, his reputation had become too toxic for the local business community. As for me, I got that promotion Jerry offered, bought a nice condo downtown, and started dating a woman named Rebecca who worked at the library. She thought my job selling industrial equipment was fascinating, and she never once suggested I was below anyone's level. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I'd pushed things too far in my quest for revenge. But then I remembered that night at Romano's Bistro, when Kathy laughed with her friends about how I was beneath her. I remembered the text messages where she called me simple and stupid. I remembered her plans to take everything I'd worked for and leave me with nothing. And I slept just fine.